I want to talk about Ezra Klein admitting to Ta-Nehisi Coates that he doesn't know what his role is anymore after quoting a Buddhist prayer and what that says about liberals and podcaster brain.
Me, right? Like my work, my role.
Can you answer that? Can you say what I think is a good point. Would you define for me how you see, like, what your role is?
I don't know what my role is anymore. I'll be totally honest with you, man. I feel very conflicted about that question. The role I want to have is a person curiously exploring his political and intellectual interests in political peacetime.
There's been a ton of excellent commentary on Coates's masterclass in history and patience in this interview, his insistence on moral honesty, his long view of politics as an unending struggle for justice versus Klein's technocratic moneyball game of polls, chasing sentiments, and cutting deals with fascists to maintain the status quo. I salute all that commentary. Like, politically, I can see that Klein is a liberal squish who hasn't a clue what the causes of fascism are, and he can't have a clue because if he did, he'd have to give up on his belief that a kinder, more abundant capitalism can work. And he's just one guy, but it's worth going hard on this because of how much power he has in democratic consultancy circles. Now, what I can add to this discussion comes from a place of sharing with Klein, one, being a white journalist, podcaster, op-ed person with a lot less power, and two, having a long-term personal and professional familiarity with how modern Buddhism practiced by convert whites can be a machine for derailing political struggle. Now, I don't know any more about Klein's meditation practice than what he's said publicly. It's been a part of his life for 15 years, so I will be generalizing from what I know about that culture among white American converts. But let me run this clip.
Once you understand that Martin Luther King could be standing up, telling his own people, we do not embrace violence at all. It is morally repugnant. We embrace love. And that could get you shot. Not burn it down. Love can get you shot. You just have a different view of your country. It is not, I emphasize this over and over again, it is not a fatalistic view. It is not, it is written in stone that we will ultimately lose, but you understand that losing is a possibility.
But so then what does there's a Buddhist meditation I like. This is a weird place to go. But it goes like this. I'm of the nature to grow sick. I'm of the nature to grow old. I'm of the nature to lose the people I love. I'm of the nature to die. How then shall I live? And
Love that.
Yeah, I do it because sometimes you need the reminder. What I hear you saying in a way is we are of the nature too.
So throughout this interview, Coates is admirably trying to say to this white guy, my people have been enslaved, lynched, and even when preaching love, they have been killed. And that is not fatalistic to suggest that even though that happens, we keep going in our moral mission, even when we lose. And throughout all of it, Klein has not really responded or actively listened to Coates or reflected any of that back. In fact, at one point he says, having a historical scope that wide can make the present too deterministic. I think he means, I hate it when history tells me my instincts are wrong. And here, Coates has just finished speaking about the murder of MLK Jr., and instead of letting that land, Klein awkwardly tries to signal, oh yeah, that's life. We all go through loss and death. And then he recites the 5 remembrances. And this is a staple of Theravada Buddhism, popularized by the Insight Meditation Group. Maybe you've heard the word Vipassana retreat, Thich Nhat Hanh, workshop influencers like Jack Kornfield and Mark Epstein. So there's this quiet whiplash pivot between talking about the assassination of King and then Klein turning the focus on himself as though his meditation life is somehow comparable to the gravity of racist murder. And I see an internalizing narcissistic habit that's pretty common among white convert Buddhist practitioners over the last 30 years. Now, I want to be clear, there's nothing essentially apolitical about this zone of Buddhist meditation practice and culture in its indigenous settings. These are the monks who self-immolated to protest Vietnam, after all. But when this stuff was discovered by spiritual tourists and commodified in the 70s and 80s and filtered through elite bi-coastal self-help culture, mindfulness and meditation were generally depoliticized by their white middle-class consumers. And part of that was an internal turn made by depressive ex-hippies, I think, who figured, well, we didn't change the world, so we can change ourselves. And why not make money selling self-help as we do? But because of that hippie heritage, a lot of people identify meditation and mindfulness with left-wing politics. But that doesn't pan out because too often the demographic is almost completely white and the focus is on depolarization, lowering the temperature, viewing conflict as unproductive or distasteful, or trying always to see beyond conflict to some common shared universal existence, even if the guy is Charlie Kirk who wants to erase trans people. But I think the biggest liability among guys like this is the instinctual feeling that if you can see things more clearly and calmly and from more perspectives, not giving in to any extreme view and finding things that are neutral and objective like polling data, that this internal state of equipoise will generate spontaneous answers, not out of history, but out of the magic of the present moment. Simpler answers than anyone thought. And maybe also your calm mood will rub off on others. And I think this is a key source of Klein's popularity, but it's also his Achilles heel as a political thinker. I think the entire vibe of calm, measuredness, fair-minded, both sidesness, his ability to endlessly turn this over and that over and never get too activated about anything, I think this is a core part of his brand, to convince people that placid deliberation will cure everything, because in meditation, it does. He makes a lot of self-references to ruminating, considerating. I've been thinking a lot about is like this favorite transitional phrase he uses. And it's also what drives his critics mad, including me. This mixture of naivety, narcissism, smugness, and detachment, this feeling that he sits in equipoise above and beyond all consequence, this feeling that you never quite know where he stands, and that any solid point of view would somehow violate his calm. These qualities are virtues in mindfulness culture. To perpetually shrug your shoulders as though it were a yoga move, to view having a clear ideological position as being too rigid or inflexible or uncharitable. So hand that guy a podcast mic, and he might do okay with self-help, meditation, and attention in the age of the internet, subjects like that. But if he believes that he can stretch his halo around every subject, and then someone like Coates hands his ass to him because he doesn't have an adult view of marginalized suffering or political struggle, of course he's going to say shit like this.
I don't know what my role is anymore. I'll be totally honest with you, man. I feel very conflicted about that question. The role I want to have is a person curiously exploring his political and intellectual interests in political peacetime.
So if fascism is on your street and you admit that what you're built for is exploring your own mind during peacetime, you have a choice to make. Klein is telling you he's not equipped temperamentally, let alone politically, to advise Democrats or anyone on anti-fascist strategy. I hope everyone listens.